Have you ever noticed that the people who affect you the most are often the people who give you the least certainty? The people you cannot stop thinking about are usually not the people who treat you best. And that is where the real problem begins, because what feels like a deep connection is often something completely different. You do not get attached because someone is right for you. You often get attached because something inside you gets activated. And by the end of this video, you may realize that some of the strongest feelings you have ever called love were never really about the other person at all. You tell yourself it happened because they were special, different, unique. You felt something immediately. The chemistry was instant. The conversations felt effortless. The attraction felt magnetic. And before you knew it, they occupied your thoughts. You checked your phone more often. You replayed conversations. You imagined future scenarios. You felt emotionally invested long before anything real had actually been built. And if this sounds familiar, stay with this video. Because what happens next explains why intelligent people repeatedly become attached to the wrong people without even realizing it. Most people believe attachment begins when someone gives you enough attention. But that explanation falls apart very quickly. Think about it. The people who consistently text back, the people who communicate clearly, the people who show genuine interest, they often create comfort. But they do not always create obsession. The obsession usually starts somewhere else. And once you see it, you will never look at attraction the same way again. The first thing you need to understand is that your brain is not designed to seek healthy relationships. It is designed to seek familiar patterns. That sounds similar, but it changes everything because familiarity and compatibility are not the same thing. In fact, they can be complete opposites. You may consciously want stability, but unconsciously, your brain may be searching for something that feels familiar instead. And sometimes familiar means unpredictable. Sometimes familiar means emotionally unavailable. Sometimes familiar means difficult to earn. This is where people begin making a mistake they do not even know they are making. They confuse emotional activation with emotional connection. The stronger the activation, the more meaningful it feels. But intensity is not evidence. Intensity is simply intensity, and your brain is surprisingly easy to fool. Imagine meeting someone who is warm one day and distant the next, interested one day and unavailable the next, present one day and impossible to read the next. Most people assume this inconsistency should push them away, yet often the opposite happens. They become more attached. Why? Because uncertainty creates psychological investment. Your mind hates unfinished stories, it hates unanswered questions, it hates ambiguity. So it starts searching for explanations, searching for signals, searching for clues, and suddenly you are no longer focused on who the person actually is. You are focused on solving them. That is the moment attachment quietly takes over. The strange part is that you think you are getting closer. But in reality, you are becoming trapped inside your own imagination. You start filling in missing information, creating explanations, building stories, projecting potential. And potential is one of the most dangerous drugs in human psychology. Because potential allows you to fall in love with a future that does not exist. Not who they are, who they might become, not what they do, what you hope they will do. Not reality, possibility. And the human brain is remarkably vulnerable to possibility, especially when emotions are involved. Now here's where things get even deeper. Many attachments are not actually about attraction, they are about regulation. You think the person is making you feel something, but often they are controlling emotional states that existed long before they arrived. Think about the moments when attachment feels strongest. It is usually not when everything is calm. It is when you feel uncertainty, distance, fear, loss, absence. Suddenly, the emotional volume gets turned up, and that is not accidental. Your nervous system is becoming involved. What people call chemistry is often a conversation between old emotional patterns and current experiences. The problem is that your nervous system cannot always distinguish between familiar pain and genuine connection. It only recognizes what it knows. And what it knows feels safe, even when it hurts. That is why some people repeatedly chase the same type of partner. Different face, different personality. Same emotional pattern, again and again and again. The details change, the experience stays the same. Have you ever wondered why someone can treat you poorly and still occupy your thoughts for months? This is one reason. Your brain is trying to complete a pattern. Trying to solve something, trying to earn something. And every small sign of approval feels disproportionately valuable because now it is not just attention. It feels like relief, and relief is powerful, stronger than most people realize. The next part is where things become uncomfortable. Because the faster you attach, the less likely the attachment is actually about the present moment. Fast attachment often means old emotional wiring has recognized something, not necessarily someone, something. A familiar emotional environment, a familiar challenge, a familiar uncertainty, and the recognition happens beneath awareness, before logic has a chance to intervene, before evidence has a chance to accumulate, before reality has a chance to speak. That is why people sometimes feel convinced they have met the right person after only a few interactions. The certainty feels real, the confidence feels real, the emotional intensity feels real, and yet all three can be misleading. Because certainty is a feeling, not proof. Now, if this insight is already changing how you think about your own relationships, consider subscribing. Because understanding human behavior becomes much easier once you learn to recognize the hidden systems running beneath it. Here's another pattern most people never notice. Attachment grows fastest when information arrives inconsistently, not consistently, inconsistently. One meaningful message, then silence. One emotional conversation, then distance. One strong signal, then confusion. This pattern activates reward circuits inside the brain, the same circuits that become highly responsive when rewards are unpredictable. And once unpredictability enters the system, emotional investment often accelerates. You become focused, alert, attentive, not because the relationship is stronger. Because your brain is searching harder, this creates a dangerous illusion. Effort begins to feel like connection. The more energy you invest, the more valuable the person appears, even if they have done very little to earn that value. You are not evaluating them anymore. You are evaluating your investment, and those are very different things. The deeper truth is that attachment is often built from meaning, not reality. You assign meaning to a message, meaning to a delay, meaning to a glance, meaning to a conversation, meaning to a possibility. And eventually the meanings become larger than the actual person. This is why people can become emotionally attached to someone they barely know. They are attached to an interpretation, not a person. Now we arrive at the deepest layer, identity. Because repeated attachment patterns eventually become part of how you see yourself. You start believing things about who you are. Maybe you believe love is difficult. Maybe you believe affection must be earned. Maybe you believe emotional security is boring. Maybe you believe intensity equals compatibility. And without realizing it, these beliefs begin guiding your choices. The scary part is that they feel like preferences, but often they are adaptations, strategies learned long ago, strategies that once served a purpose. Strategies that no longer help you. The good news is that the brain is not fixed. Patterns are powerful, but patterns can change. Neuroscience calls this neuroplasticity. Your brain constantly updates itself based on repeated experiences, which means every time you choose awareness over impulse, you strengthen a different pathway. Every time you slow down before attaching. Every time you observe rather than chase. Every time you question intensity instead of worshiping it, you are teaching your brain something new. And that process matters more than people think, because healthy attachment rarely feels dramatic at first. That is what surprises many people. Healthy connections often feel quieter, more stable, less addictive, less chaotic, and because they feel different from familiar emotional patterns, they can initially seem less exciting. But over time, something remarkable happens. Peace begins replacing uncertainty. Trust begins replacing obsession. Presence begins replacing fantasy. And for many people, that is the first time they experience genuine connection, not emotional turbulence, not endless guessing, not psychological pursuit, connection. Real connection, the kind that does not require constant decoding, the kind that does not depend on emotional highs and lows, the kind that allows you to be yourself instead of performing for approval. And perhaps that is the most important realization of all. The wrong people do not always attract you because they are extraordinary. Sometimes they attract you because they activate something unfinished. Something familiar, something unresolved, but awareness changes the equation. Because once you see the pattern loses some of its power. You stop asking why you cannot let go of them. And start asking why the attachment formed in the first place. That question changes everything. Because the answer is not always hidden in the other person. Often it is hidden in the relationship between your past and your present. And once you understand that relationship, you stop chasing explanations, you start building freedom. So before you leave, take a moment and think about the person who came to mind while watching this video. Was it really them you were attached to? Or was it the feeling they activated inside you? Let me know in the comments. Because sometimes the most important breakthrough happens when you finally recognize the difference. And if this video gave you a new way to understand yourself, subscribe and join us for the next one. Because the human mind is full of hidden patterns, and the moment you learn to see them, you begin to change them.